Welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Marketing Orthopedics, Balancing Priorities to Achieve ROI. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode. We encourage you to ask questions using your Q&A feature on your Zoom toolbar. Feel free to introduce yourselves to other attendees by posting comments to the chat feature. Be sure to use the all panelists and attendees so everyone gets to see your comments. This webinar is being recorded. Please know we'll share via email the video link to each attendee in the upcoming week. Today's distinguished panelists of orthopedic marketing leaders are Lynn Buscarin, owner, Peak Medical Marketing; Ron Horsefsky, solutions consultant with Raider 8 and past president and former board member of AAOE; Matthew Johnson, director of marketing and human resources at Concord Orthopedics; and Jason Olenio, vice president of Associated X-ray Imaging. So I turn to Ron to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the confusion about the start time. Everybody on the panel thought that that it started at 1, so we apologize for that confusion. But I am so excited about this talk today. I know some of you came here today expecting to see Lynn Pratt be on the panel. She just had an urgent matter that she had to attend to. So she's fine, but she was not able to attend. So I just want to thank Lynn Buscarin for joining kind of at the last minute. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Lynn. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Mia, if you can stop your share, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the results of the survey that a bunch of people participated in. So thank you to those folks who did participate in that. I just want to kind of run through some of those results with everybody because it helps to kind of set the table for our conversation today. It's basically talking about some of the priorities that we have in our marketing world. So the first question had to do with Facebook. How important is Facebook to the marketing plan of your practice? And so we had about 22 people respond to all these survey questions. So thanks to all of you. And you can see Facebook is a pretty big priority in practices, and that seems like an appropriate place for people to be putting their attention. Well placed. Instagram, somewhat important for about 41% of the practices, not very important for anybody. And it looks like Twitter followed a similar kind of path there. So it seems like in the social media world that we're putting our attention in the right place, being Facebook at the moment. How important are online reviews to your current marketing plan? Happy to see, especially where I come from, that it's really a top priority for a lot of practices. So that's really encouraging to see, and that it's not. I'm glad nobody said that it was not important. So, so local team and sponsorships seem to be a pretty decent spread across the board. Most people leaning towards it being very important or somewhat important, and about 40% having it be a little bit less of a priority in the practice. And then a question that's very important about, how much do you put into your marketing budget? Or like what percentage of your revenues? And I think the standard that I've been familiar with in terms of a benchmark has been about 1 to 3%. So the average for the respondents was 1.57, so basically 1.6%, but the range was from 0.5% all the way up to 10%, which I thought was really interesting. And then, the last question was kind of an open-ended question, kind of like what makes up the majority of your marketing plan. Just give people an opportunity to leave some comments. And I thought it was really interesting, because there's a pretty wide range of activities here that people are participating in. Some of them are clearly marketing, and some of them are sales. And that kind of leads me into the first question that I want to throw out to the panel. And this may sound like a silly question, but it really isn't. in my book, it's not a silly question, but what is marketing? Like, can I throw it to you first, Jason, and just say, what is marketing, and is there a difference between marketing and sales?
Sure. I always say that marketing gets me in the door, then it's my job to sell.
Okay.
Marketing gets your patient to your practice, then it's your job to keep them there, I guess.
Okay, I like that answer. How about you, Matt? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. For me, I think marketing is starting to build the trust with your patient initially, in whatever medium or form that is.
Mm-hmm.
And after you earn that trust and you can build that trust, then you can do the sales thing inside of your building. That's what your providers are very, very good at. At least we hope they are. But how do we get people through those doors to be able to experience that quote unquote sale at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm. Great. And Lynn, what are your thoughts on the difference?
I'd like to follow kind of what Matthew said.
Sure.
That marketing is building a relationship with your patients, with your community, with your referral base. And it's not really a sell, it's really the patient experience. That's the difference of marketing and sales. Sales is that, here's my widget, will you buy it?
Sure. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of us on the Zoom today. And it brings me to another question, which is kind of a philosophical question, but when does a patient visit start? When does the patient experience start? And I think it's an important question for us all to look at. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Lynn. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. We have talked about this before in the past, and the patient experience really starts when they are on their phone Googling your practice.
Mm-hmm.
What are they seeing? Are they seeing you've got 5-star ratings? Are they seeing that they can click on your website right from the Google listing? And can they get on your website? And is your website updated? Is it modern? So that's truly the step before they walk through your door.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Matt, what do you have to say about when a patient visit or experience actually starts with a practice?
Sure. I actually like to take a little bit earlier than that, if possible. So something that we're trying to do at Conquer Orthopedics is to capture patients far before they even need to be with us. And as we move through this little webinar, we'll talk about social media marketing and things like that. But if our long-term, long-build strategies to market our practice are effective, which we all hope they are, then patients should understand exactly where they need to be going before they get injured, right? Like they've seen us in the community, they've seen our providers on some kind of a social media video or something. They've heard their voices, they've seen them in the community. So then the moment they get injured, it's not even necessarily a Google moment at that time. For me, it's like, oh, my leg just broke. I need to go to Conquer Orthopedics right now and not even think about, oh, who is the best one around me. I should already be the best one in their minds before they even have that moment. So yes, obviously SEO and Google is super important, but if we can capture that mentality before you're even injured, that's the tough part. And I'm sure we'll talk about some kind of sales cycle as well. But for orthopedics, as I think we all know, there's no like, oh, it's weekend sale coming today, coming this weekend, 50% off knee replacements. Like that
It's a
doesn't happen.
great weekend to sprain your ankle.
Yeah, it looks pretty good outside. So
Right.
the sales cycle is so long. So if you can be in a top of mind all the time, that's so important for us and for marketing for us.
That's great. Matt, it sounds like what you're describing is really just building a brand for an organization. And when I think about that, I think about Jason in terms of brand building, because I've known this gentleman for maybe decades, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're not old enough, but we're
started
actually pretty close to the same age. You just look better than me. But building a brand for an organization is about building relationships. So
True.
how do you see that working for an orthopedic practice?
Like you said, Ron, I've been doing this for a long time. And when I started, every orthopedic office was Dr. Jones or Dr. Smith. It was just the guy's practice. There was no logo. There was no marketing piece. And now everything's Excel Orthopedics and Copa. Logos. I mean, Nike and everybody's got a logo. It's really cool to see these orthopedic practices with logos and creative names and colors, and it's awesome. It makes your patients feel like part of a team. People want to wear the Nike logo. They want to wear your logo too. I think Matt was right on the money with you want your customers to know who you are before they need you. That is a very accurate thing.
I think that's a great point. I know that Lynn Pratt, who was going to be on the call today, one of the things that she talked about in terms of building a brand was building a sense of knowledge about the different providers in your practice in a community, kind of humanizing those providers. So I guess I would throw it out to whoever has a great answer. How do you humanize your providers in your practice so that they see them not only as physicians, but as members of your community?
Yeah.
I think I can take a stab at this. For us, the first hurdle there is getting the providers to want to do it. A lot of our providers, like when they come in, especially the new ones, or when I started here, it was, oh, have you ever been marketed before? And it's one of these like, what's that now? And why would I ever do that? Like, I work from this building, and that's the thing that people should know. But it's building that trust with people. And I want our patients to have about 3 or 4 touch points with our providers before they even step foot through our door. I want them to hear their voice. I want them to see their faces. I want our patients to see different publications or webinars or things that they've done. So the moment they get in there, you don't have this, oh my God, there's a white coat, like hands off, whatever this person says goes. So we start building that trust and that relationship before you get in the door. And then once you meet that person, then you can start getting into, oh, like I saw on your profile, you like rock climbing. I love rock climbing. And you can build those things. And I can tell you, when I hurt my shoulder, I will follow my surgeon, not Concord Orthopedics, but my surgeon to the ends of the earth, because we bonded on something that was so much bigger than, oh, I'm going to fix your shoulder. So one, getting your providers to want to do that and to be able to say, hey, like, yeah, we're very well trained. We're all very smart. And I think that's kind of like the baseline and the expectation of when you go into a practice and have the best doctors. But what more can you offer me than just that fantastic care? How do you connect with me on a more personal level? So breaking down that barrier between the white coats and the normal people is super important for that brand and for the trust.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that one, making a physician understand that they play an active role in it, and understanding that there is a lot of loyalty that's developed towards the physician, not just the practice itself. So two great points. Jason, you had a great story that you had told me about practices promoting physicians in creative ways. I don't know if there was some special type of card or something that the doctors were handing out.
They made one of my ortho customers created, and this was a great idea. I don't know where they got it from, but they created what looked like a baseball card. So instead of a doctor handing out a business card, which we see a million of them, it was a baseball card with the doctor in his lab coat with he had a golf club or a fishing pole or a baseball bat, whatever his thing was. And on the front, it was just a picture and, like a baseball card. And when you flipped it over on the back, it was where he went to school, where he did his residency fellowship, other places he's worked, his specialties, and then a little bit about married kids, personal baseball fan, hockey fan, whatever, just something that made the patient feel like they knew this person. Like, I went to see Dr. So-and-so and he gave me his card. And I know, I don't know if it goes on the refrigerator or where it goes, but it makes them feel like they have a personal relationship with this guy or girl or whoever. And I also think that news travels to the family and the friends and so on and so forth. It's just a nice thing to have.
We should all have our own baseball cards.
We should.
We should.
Imagine if on the card they had a little Q code scanner so you could scan with your phone and then go right to their website.
Even better.
I think this is a great business idea. We'll talk about this after. I think that's a great idea, Jason. And now we've just basically humanized the folks that we're trying to promote. So, and Lynn, I know that you have a really unique perspective on kind of branding a practice in terms of and maybe you can tell us a little bit about, because you do the Peak Medical Marketing Company that you've started. You basically provide liaisons to help promote a practice. So depending upon the size of the practice, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how that helps to build the brand for the organization.
Exactly. And that's the whole foundation of the company I started. So it's to bridge the gap between a primary care physician and the specialist, because as everyone knows, 20 years ago, hospitalists started in the hospitals. Back in the day when like Ron and I were injured, our primary care doctor would see us in the hospital. But now it's just the specialists. So a lot of these incoming PCPs don't know Dr. Ron. Who is Dr. Ron? I see his name. I don't know what he does. And those baseball cards would be really good. So the benefit is we have a representative that goes out on their behalf and educates the primary care physicians on surgeries they're doing, on new office locations. But they also build that relationship that we've been talking about. They begin to see Lynn as a rep, but I'm also my specialty. I'm their link, so they can share if they're having issues referring patients, what takes too long to get into it. Or one of their patients said, I was treated really badly at the front desk. Well, our representatives have the ability to share that with the practices. So it just builds that community relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. At one of my previous practices, I used to visit more than 100 practices a couple of times a year, and building those relationships was very helpful when things went bad. Like if there was a patient who had a bad experience and I knew about it, I could call somebody that I knew in the practice and tell them in advance that, hey, listen, so-and-so was here. They had a bad experience. You might be hearing from them. I just wanted you to hear from us first. And they'd say, thank you very much. Or they might say, I've already heard about it. And that's not what they said happened. Thank you for calling, because now I know you didn't pull a knife on my patient. Like, oh, yep, sorry. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess another open-ended question, and I'm curious. I kind of know how important they are, but I'd like to maybe have somebody speak to how important online reviews are for a practice and how important an online reputation is. If somebody wants to take a stab at that.
I think it's very important. Like I talked about, that the patient, I'm coming out of seeing Dr. Ron. I get in my car and I was told by Dr. Ron to see Dr. Jason. So first thing I do is get my phone out and I look up Dr. Jason. And if he has 5 reviews and the average review star is a 3, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to see Dr. Jason. And I'll go home and ask my friend, and who did you go to get your ACL repaired? And they'll be like, oh, well, I went to Concord Orthopedics. And I had a great time. The doctor was so kind, considerate, and I felt like I was welcomed there. Well, I'm not going to go see Dr. Jason because the reviews weren't there or the website didn't look good. Mm-hmm. Reviews are so important now.
Yep.
Even my mom goes on the phone and looks up reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then also just the importance of having healthy Google My Business listings. I would encourage everybody who's listening to make sure that they own them and that they control them and that they have all the robust information. I don't know. I didn't want to jump in front of Matt or Jason. I don't know if you guys had anything else on that before we move to our next topic.
Yeah, I think it's what Lynn said is perfect, but I think it's important that you can't prevent negative reviews. You're going to get some negative reviews, but you have to pay attention to it. You have to address it. If you're going to do marketing, it's got to be a full-time thing. You have to watch it constantly. If somebody has a bad experience, you can recover with the reason. You can comment on their review and say, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. We were under construction that day, and that's why the sidewalk was the way it was, or something like that. If you just leave it untouched, then it is a negative review. But a negative review can be made positive if you address it. I think that's super important to watch those things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I'll just expound on that a little bit. I feel like we're in a culture where whatever you do, you look online to see what it is. Like, I mean, I just looked up like a yard cleaning service and like, all these repair people, and that speaks to me. Like, okay, if you have one review and it's a 5-star review, but if you, for me, maybe I'm just the weird one, but if you have 50 reviews and you're a 4-star, I'm going there first.
Yep.
So, and I see in the chat, somebody said that's where Raider has been very helpful. And, I know Evan's on here, and Ron, obviously you're at Raider right now. That's where using those kind of services really helps boost whatever you need to do. And just a quick example, one of our providers had a really, really low health grade score for some reason. I mean, it was just like, for some reason it was low. And we worked with Raider 8 and our account manager there, and we boosted up the health grade specifically for that provider. And he noticed, like, he had patients come to him, tell him, it's like, oh, like, I saw your health grades was low. Now it's pretty high. I was like, I'm not sure what's going on, but I really like to see that score go up. And say all your scores are very similar across all platforms, not just Google's up here and Raider and health grades are down below. To have that kind of big cultural review, but also it's a great way to start a conversation. If like, you go to say, hey, say your friend, hey, I saw Dr. Jason and his reviews weren't that great, but what do you think? And if somebody can then back you up on the other side saying yes, good or bad, it's you have that more information to go in. So even if your review is low, but you have a good reputation otherwise, you can kind of soften that negative review a little bit more. But yeah, for sure, those online reviews for anything you do, think about any restaurant you go to, what's the first thing you do? Even if you don't like Mexican food and you're going to a Mexican restaurant, you're going to find out what the best dish there is, and you're probably going to get that one dish.
Mm-hmm. True.
Matt, just in follow-up, thank you for that. Jamie Richard had a question for us while we were talking about what we would do with a review that was like 6 months old. Like if there was a negative review that hadn't been addressed, like I'm going to start calling him Dr. Jason, even though he has bad reviews. Like Jason had mentioned, like how would you handle that at Concord?
I would hope it didn't get to that point, and it wasn't 6 months into the past. I mean, if you're going to get a review, and that's huge. If somebody takes the time, and I think we all know that the majority of people are going to probably review your site or your service if it's a negative experience. I mean, it takes, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it's exponentially greater to have a negative review than a positive review. So if you have that and you're letting it sit there and this fester, and that person can just then be talking to whoever they want to, like, I had this issue, I tried to reach out and nobody said anything to me. Like that is just exponential negative reviews. But if you're able to combat it that day or the next day, either, through that online reviewer site or like giving them a call, because you obviously have their information, then you can start building that trust back and say, like Jason said, oh, we had just a bad day or whatever. And we actually just had an experience like that. We're partnering with a local hospital, and some people up at that local hospital didn't quite understand about same-day appointments. So they told our patient, like, oh, we don't do that here. And this lady wrote this, I don't want to say scathing review, but it was a negative review about, oh, Orthopedics does not have the services that they say they do. I actually got on the phone with this lady, just telling her, like what about the situation. She took the review down before I even could ask her if she would want to. And then she wrote a positive review saying everything was handled. And thanks so much for clearing things up. So that's the way to build that piece on. But as for a 6-month review, you would probably want to talk to your providers or your upper management to say, here's a problem that we had, but maybe can somebody reach out in the future? And these are issues that we might have.
That's a great answer. And I would just briefly add that I would encourage you to bury that bad review with really good reviews.
But I would at least reply to it. Even though it's 6 months old, I would reply to it today, apologize for not getting back to them, and try to address whatever it is. I'm an ultra sales guy, so I would be sticky sweet about, oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't see this. And is there anything I can do to help? I would still address it.
Mhm.
Whether it's 6 months old, 8 months old, a year old, I would still jump on it.
There are a couple of other questions coming through the chat, and we will get to those. I'm going to ask you to take note of those questions for us, but I do want to shift gears, maybe change the subject a little bit, because earlier on, Matt had mentioned that we're going to talk about social media. You also mentioned about attracting patients before they need you. I'm assuming the answer to that riddle is through something like Facebook or through social media and building a relationship. So I'm going to direct it to you first, Matt, because I know you've had a lot of success in building up Facebook followers at Concord Orthopedics. So I'm curious about your strategy and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how important you think it is.
Yeah, I think it's super important. It's one of the most, for me, it's one of the most important things we do, especially now in the pandemic, which I'm not sure if there's an end in sight right now, but especially now when people aren't doing as much, especially in the orthopedic world, we're reliant on people falling down, going skiing, being active. But when you have shutdowns, that is just naturally going to slow down. And we've seen it as a practice that those, big cases, total joints are slowing down because people are either afraid of COVID, or they have lockdowns, or they're not active as much as they usually are, right? So we've been able to revamp and just kind of reimagine what we do as a practice in marketing. Before it was just patients come to our door, we tell them what's going on, they leave, they come back for surgery. Now we're doing a little bit more outreach, and social media is the perfect way to do that, because of course people who are home doing nothing are either watching Netflix or flipping through some kind of social media channel. And I think the numbers are like people spend 2 hours a day on like Facebook, which is bananas. And I think people over the age of like 50 are spending over an hour and a half on Facebook, which is also bananas. So you have a captive audience who's looking for something, and why not take the advantage there and put your message to where they're looking? I mean, as marketing, you're always kind of like, oh, do I put it on a billboard? Do I put it on the radio? Who's going to hear this? Now we have a very structured system where you can find kind of like any analytics you want, which is great for those ROI people who need to, justify the spend at some point. But you have a captive audience ready to do something. And as we all know, social media is pretty cheap too. So if that's part of your equation, whether or not you want to spend money here or there, social media is a more probably dollar for dollar better spend than that $10,000 billboard that looks great because it's huge and gigantic and you have 1 million impressions a month. But who's really looking at that billboard? And if you can remember the last billboard you saw and what it said, I'd love to talk to you.
Lynn, you had a really good story that you shared with me about how a practice went about increasing the number of followers they had. I was wondering if you could share that.
Yeah, I would definitely like to share that. And so a practice that I work with, I know you guys are probably Patriots fans, but they raffled off Eagle tickets and the engagement doubled to their Facebook account. and it was just 2 Eagles tickets, but the people were looking at it, they were sharing it with their friends. So it was a great way to get the practice name out to their recipients or their patient base. And the numbers stayed up. They didn't stay quite as high, but they definitely stayed up pre-Eagles, and the level has maintained because they put out good content, and they do weekly posts, and they do physician features, which is really nice. And what I also recommend in my practices to do is definitely do the social media, but digital marketing, just targeted digital marketing has made a huge impact with one of my practices. So if they're focusing on Facebook, let's say they're focusing on hip arthritis, well, then they coordinate the digital piece to target people who are going into the medical building, going into physical therapy with messages about the practice focusing on hip arthritis. And it's kind of ties into what Matthew said. You're trying to hit them on the social and the media level because they are at home doing that. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely, thank you. Jason, what about you? Any nuggets of gold to share with us about social media?
I have millions of ideas. I'm a t-shirt guy. I love when I see the ortho practices do t-shirts with their logos. A buddy of mine who's in the print media world, he says, Jay, orthopedics is cool. You're not urology, like that's not cool. You're orthopedic, like that's a cool thing. It's broken bones. Yeah, you're in a cool business. He says, so you're X-ray. We sell X-ray to orthopedic surgeons. Those are cool things. It's easy to do marketing when you're in a not a fun business, but a unique business. Orthopedic sports medicine is a cool thing. So there's a million ways to market that. I think Matt was talking about your presence, and I go by some orthopedic practices and I look at their sign, right? If the sign in front of your building is falling down, that's a bad impression. The impression starts way before patients walk in the building. It's important for your logo and your presence in your building and your parking lot. And if people drive by your practice and they see it and it looks like a nice place, then that's like Matt said, that's where the marketing starts. Then they become your friend on Facebook and they follow you, and it goes from there. Again, I'm a t-shirt guy. I love to see the orthopedic t-shirt logos, and people ask each other when they see the t-shirt, oh, did you go there? What'd you have done? Like it's a conversation starter at the gym or at a fun run or at an event when you see somebody with a t-shirt on when you're contemplating having a knee replacement,
No cotton though, right? Is that just a bias I have, or is that true? No cotton.
Hey, it's whatever money you want to spend if you want to buy the good stuff.
Matt, I had a question for you, kind of getting back a little bit to the social media discussion, because I'm curious if you have some stories to share with unique physician engagement in social media and how it impacts patient response.
Yeah, so we had a great story. I hope you don't mind, Ron. It has to do with Ron a little bit.
Oh. That's not what I was thinking. Okay.
Oh, no?
No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So back in the early pandemic, we had a shortage of patient screeners in one of our sites. And all of us in the leadership team kind of looking around like, who's going to do this? Nobody really wants to do this. And Ron's like, I'll do it for a few hours. So my mind exploded. I was like, wow, the CEO is going to go screen patients, and that's amazing. So he went down and I was like, make sure you get a photo of this. You need to take a photo so I can post it on social media. Because in my world, I'm like, this is gonna be the best thing in the history of the universe. Mm-hmm. Posted it up. It did pretty well. I will say it did pretty well for a guy that probably nobody in our patient base has ever seen before. Definitely not on our social media page that I've really seen.
It went viral, as I remember. But go ahead.
In contrast, a few months before, we had one of our providers, we were having a new office built and a different satellite office pre-pandemic. And he was, somebody took a photo of him. I think it was kind of planned, but it was like, hey, take this photo real quick. And they sent it to me. And I posted that as well. And it was literally him sitting at a metal desk in a hallway, just smiling, like just random, could have been anywhere. And we're like, whatever it takes, we're going to see your patients. And that thing just went ridiculous. I mean, probably 8 times better review and, than Ron, which I thought was amazing. So that's part of, it was part of 2 things that we kind of were enlightened to on that day, is that what I think is good isn't necessarily always good. And that's okay. But then we're able to listen to our patient base and say, what does our following want to see? And what we found out is that, we don't have LeBron James coming through Concord, New Hampshire all the time. You have Michael Jordan doing those things and saying like, this is the best place ever. But who our influencers are, kind of getting back to those baseball cards and building the trust. Our influencers are the people who are doing the surgeries and who've been here for many, many years. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of tailored now everything that we do social media wise to a provider centric piece, because we know that having that provider giving the information, whatever it is more impactful than me or our CEO or just, Joe Schmo or Dr. Jason. Like those things, those providers, again, who built the trust is just so much more important than anything that we really did, I think, previous to that one post. So we were able to restructure what we do to base upon pretty much everything for that.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things I think that go ahead, Jason.
Matt, you made me think of something. We talk about what we think is going to be good on Facebook, what we think people will like, and it doesn't always work the way we think. I remember having a conversation at my office about, guys, we do a lot of cool X-ray stuff, but if you post on our Facebook page, do you think the white cat or the black cat is cuter? We'll get more responses. People like to hear their opinion. They want to feedback. So when we do things at our office and we're thinking about how we're going to do things, we post it on Facebook and say, hey, what do you guys think? Should we do it this way or that way? And the feedback is tremendous. That people like to give their opinions. They like to, for good or bad, they like to speak their mind and say what they want. So we've had a lot of success with asking questions of our Facebook followers, and it's worked out well. Just a thought.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you. Matt, I was just going to throw it back to you one more time, because you did something at Concord Orthopedics that was, I think, something that everybody could learn, which is that you impressed upon the physicians that they might be doing something of interest, that they should just take a picture and send it to you. And it at first, it wasn't received with, oh yeah, I do a lot of things, I'm going to send you a lot of pictures. It was kind of like, who, me? I mean, that was really the reaction from the physicians. They're like, you're talking to me? Like if I'm standing on the sidelines of a sporting event covering a game, you want me to take a picture of that? Like, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So it took a while, didn't it? So I mean, I don't want to talk. You can talk about it.
Yeah, it took maybe a few months to get it through them. And this is again part of the. I'm not sure if it's a global thing, but just at least for us, it's our physicians want the spotlight, but don't want the spotlight kind of situation. But they want to be spotlighted in the operating room. But again, how do we make sure that our patient base feels that they're part of the community? So we did have one of our providers get a photo of him at like a local football game on a Friday night that he was covering. And he's like, are these photos okay? I'm like, yep, these are great. And they were awful photos, awful. But they exploded. And because people are just like, oh, love Dr. So-and-so. This is the best. Like, this is so great to see him out there. And then we kind of doubled down through the pandemic. We asked our providers, like, what are you doing this weekend? Like, and so we had a few providers, like one was baking cookies, one was playing piano with his daughter. So again, just those little moments that you can kind of say like, oh, I do that. And that's normal. And again, just a different level of understanding of who our providers are versus just, oh, there's a doctor giving me the worst news ever. This is something else that, you know, is a conversation starter and that you can build a little bit more of a relationship with.
Great, great. Any other social media topics we should be touching upon before I switch gears on you all again?
I would say just last is engage. I think, Jason, what you said is really important. Either asking people questions, but if you have a great post and people are writing comments, if you have 40 comments on your post, that's fantastic. But if you engage with them and you say,
Yes,
yeah, thanks so much, you know, Linda, that was, yeah, happy to do it for you, or whatever the thing is, and that goes a long way too, to have a little bit of a conversation with your patients and saying, like, if you do something here, you'll get a response. And that's really important for the user of the Facebook channel. Say, oh, I didn't just like it and people, whatever. They actually meant something to that organization and they wrote back to me. That's really important. And it might take you 30 minutes one day, but that 30 minutes might be well worth it next year.
Great.
Powerful. Agree.
Yeah. So I apologize that I'm missing some questions as they come through, but Renee Reynolds just posted a question about boosting posts and how impactful that can be, how often it's done. Floor is open.
So we boost a post if it has some success. You know, like Matt and I were just talking about, you never know when a post is going to grab attention. So if we post something and we start to see traffic from it, then we'll boost it. We'll make it bigger. If some people like it, a lot of people will like it. We kind of go on that theory. I wouldn't do it too much. I guess there's the question mark. You don't want to irritate your followers with too much data. You don't want to overdo it. But I don't think anybody in the orthopedic world is in the Geico marketing world where it's constant pounding. I think any marketing is good marketing. So we boost the things that look, that we get some feedback from. That's when we trigger that thing.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, we boost anything that's kind of big and newsworthy.
Yeah.
So we'll have like a relatively weekly video of our providers giving like a small little tip of like, make sure you stand up every few hours when you're working from home. Like just little things, but we won't boost that. But when we opened our brand new orthopedic surgery center, you better believe we boosted the heck out of that before we posted it. We want the biggest reach imaginable for that $200 or whatever it was. And you would be surprised at how much reach and engagement you get from a very, very lowly boosted post. Because once you build your base, that's just like an automatic, you know, start block for you. But once you boost that just a little bit, and the best part about that is you can target it to wherever you want it to be targeted. So you can really get down to the nitty gritties of, oh, I want it to be boosted, but I want it to be boosted 50 miles away because that's where my nearest competitor is. You know, so you can get into little minutia like that. But yeah, anything that we feel would be really important for our patients to know, we boost it, even if it's like $50.
It's amazing the impact that $50 can have.
Crazy.
Yeah, especially when you do target it the way you mentioned. And I think that transitions well into what I was hoping to speak about next, which is kind of the elusive subject of kind of defending our marketing efforts in terms of return on investment. So I think it's probably a great place to start. When you boost a post, you're able to know exactly what the return on investment is. So I don't know if any of you can speak to that and what kind of data you get and what you learn from a boosted post.
Sure, I guess I can go here. This might be easier for me. So when we boost a lot, relatively a lot, but so then we're able to find out just the demographics. So that's huge. It's like I want this post to be from 50 years up, and that's it. I don't want teenagers seeing this thing because I mean they're probably not going to have any decision power anyway when they're coming to get their care. But we're able to really break it down and say, and what I find really good about boosting is a lot more people will comment on it. So people will say like, oh, that's great. You have this new surgical center. My knee kind of hurts. Like, and then I'll be like, oh, give us a call right now. Come see us for our acute injury clinic. And then I'll follow up with that though. So it's a little bit more of a legwork for me. But if I can say I boosted someone for $200 and the next day we got a total knee replacement out of it, I think it's worth it. Or at least for me, it's worth that. That is worth the price, right? And then you get the next parts of that patient is like, was your experience great? And how does their recovery go? And you can kind of walk with them through their journey and say, hey, like, make sure you like us on Facebook or whatever the medium is. And if you follow their journey and then you see the post a year later, oh, so happy that I'm able to get back to picking up my grandkid. Thanks to Conquer Orthopedics, they tagged you because now they followed you. You can then reply back. So great, Melissa. So happy this happened for you. Like we're always here for you no matter what. We hope we never see you again. But the ROI piece is really, really important because like in a traditional sense, I think for sales, like for someone like you, Jason, it might be easier. Like, okay, I went to this meeting, it cost me X amount of dollars to travel, it cost me lunch or whatever, but sold the machine or whatever it is. So worked out well. But for marketing for an orthopedic, which I think we mentioned before, like the sales cycle is so long. Like my capture of a sale might be long after I've been fired from this organization, but they don't realize that until that it happened in the future. So for executives who are on this call, it's important to understand that ROI is not always going to be brought down into a physical number. It could be engagement of your patient. It could be trust of the patient. It could be a few more office visits. It could be just somebody else following your accounts, which is then long-term marketing. And hopefully in a few years, because you've done that thing now, you capture that patient. But if you're only looking for, you posted something, how much did it cost? How many engagements were on that one thing? You might be gauging or valuing the wrong piece of that ROI.
Very interesting. You make a great point that return on investment is not always measured in dollars, right? It can be measured in how many people visit your Google My Business profile, right? If you're looking at your Google My Business Insights, it can be measured in how many people are visiting your website. So when you do an initiative, any type of marketing initiative, you can see if you're getting more people to both the Google My Business profile or to your website. So paying attention to those numbers is really important. Anything else on return on investment? It's sometimes a difficult question to answer, but I think sometimes social media gives you raw data that you can answer it with, and sometimes just volume of people visiting different sites can really provide you with a tool to say this is what we did and this was the impact of it, even if it's not measured in patients. There are some practices I can tell you that do a successful job of translating a marketing effort to new patients being brought into the practice. So it's challenging, but it can be done. We're getting close to the end, and I know there's questions out there. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add about return on investment before we might think about transitioning to questions? Okay, Mia, do you want to handle the questions for us? I've caught some of them as they've come through, but admittedly I've lost some of them. There is a question Carrie Barber just asked, and then I'll turn it over to you, Mia, about how significant is face-to-face marketing to referring offices?
Very important. Yeah, like, and this is the thing that's going to probably take the most time. Not a lot of money, but a lot of physical time just to drive to the place and to have the meeting. Especially with COVID, like a lot of people aren't wanting just random people rolling through their office. But if you're able to make that face-to-face and say, hey, I'm going to be the person you want to talk to if this happens, or if you want me to bring some lunch over for your providers, I'd love to do that. Thanks for giving us 300 patients. I think it's worth a lunch for you guys. So that face-to-face, so you can say, okay, Matt is the person I know over there. And if I ever need anything, I can call him whenever I need it. So it's really, really important for us at Conquer Orthopedics.
Yeah.
I have some statistics that I use with the when I'm speaking with my clients. So for example, I was working with a practice and they were getting in around 110 new patients a month. And they implemented having a physician liaison go out and talk to the referral base. And after a whole month of that engagement to their referral base, their new patient referrals went up to 265 a month. So it's significant. I've had other practices just double. They want, your referral base want to know what you do. And they want to have a name, if they want that baseball card with the name and the face and, oh, he's a golfer too, or they just need that connection. So it's, and it's a moderate, it's like Matt said, it's not a ton of money, but it's a great resource to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that what Lynn was saying earlier about physicians not necessarily, like a primary care physician, maybe not having the same relationship with a specialist that they had maybe a decade or more ago because of the existence of hospitalists now, that if you can get one of your surgeons to visit a practice that you want to either say thank you to or build referrals with, they will so appreciate the fact that that person took their own time to come and meet with them, and they showed up with pizzas, and they taught us how to handle something. I can just tell a brief story. There was a pediatric practice that I was trying to increase referrals from for a long time. It took a long time to get through the door. I finally got through the door, and then I ultimately had all of their nurses come over to our orthopedic practice and learn about bracing and splinting, how to handle an acute injury. And immediately when the nurses came over and they met our staff, and we were all of a sudden there was this relationship, and it all just took care of itself. So there's a lot of opportunities there. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal the floor. Anything else on that before I turn it over to Mia for another question? Mia, we have anything out there?
Cindy Bartkowiak asks, do any of you do radio or TV ads? And does it create real benefit long-term?
That's a tough one. I came into my practice pretty much saying I will never do radio, which makes probably you're assuming that we're going to go into radio now a little bit. But again, I think that's part of the evolution of what you're doing and the times that we're in, and to always be flexible with what your plan is. Like, you can build out a marketing strategy. And I mean, if I told the CEO in 2019, this is what the marketing strategy for 2020 is going to be, I think things changed in 2020. So again, like, how do you capture your audience where they are now? Is it social? We're looking into something like a public radio situation, just because it covers the entire state. The demographics are exactly what we're telling ourselves we want. And this is the conversation we had, though, was what's the ROI? And it's always difficult to tell the higher ups what ROI on radio is. I couldn't tell you what it is. They probably couldn't tell. They could try to tell you what it is, but they don't know what it is. And it's the same with TV. But if you can build that long-term build and that long-term burn of your message and of your product and your brand, it's worth it for like a $7,000 spend over 6 months, when you can do other silly things here and there for $1,000 and they don't have any impact. But if you're willing to be able to take the risk of a $7,000 spend and then see where it goes from there, it's something that you might want to take a peek at.
I work with a practice here in Delaware that is on the radio. They coordinate their radio with digital, and they do commercials during the University of Delaware football games, basketball games, and they are known from the top of the state to the bottom of the state just because they're on the radio. And one of the physicians, which may be one of your physicians in your groups, would want to commentate on some of the games. We have a fabulous doctor here who is involved. He stands on the sidelines, he commentates, he does the injury report, and that just helps build your brand. So that's something I would highly recommend.
What do we got, Mia? Anything else?
Thanks, Ron. Jamie Richard asks your thoughts on short YouTube videos of surgeons and patient testimonials to drive traffic and awareness.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll jump in if you want. We got a I got a guy up here in Boston that just opened up a ortho laser thing, breaking away from his ortho practice and doing a laser thing. He's from San Diego, California. You would think he's an actor if you saw him. And every day he's got some YouTube video or quick thing, some new product he's trying. He gets Stryker and Zimmer and those young, energetic guys involved. And hey, we're gonna try this new thing today and check this out. And he does cadaver lab videos. You can't buy guys like that though. He's just naturally, he wants to be in front of the camera. He's got his phone in his hand all the time, you know, FaceTime this, FaceTime that, and he kills it. He's got millions of followers. He's got a YouTube channel. He's just an amazing guy. He's an actor that's also a doctor. It's you can't, I don't know how you create that. I don't know how you build that. Maybe there's somebody in your practice that wants to carry that torch. But I want to tie that into another question that came up, that Facebook and YouTube and these things, they're all free. You can put YouTube videos of your doctors up for free. No, there's no charge for that. It's just your personal time and your attention to it. If you want to boost posts and do radio things, that's good too. But marketing can be free. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's just time and energy.
And you link your videos from your free YouTube channel from your Facebook posts.
Yep. Amazing.
And then it drives traffic to your website. So it completes the circle.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely. I know the practice I used to manage, I used to interview the physicians and do a podcast about the different surgeries they did, so that if somebody was having a total knee replacement, they could go to the website and listen to that doctor talking about it, because in the office they learned a lot, but then they also forgot a lot, so they go back and relearn it a little bit. So that becomes content that can be important too. Just a funny aside is that those podcasts took on a much broader audience. I got a call from a doctor in Texas once who wanted me to be on my radio program. And I was like, I don't have a radio program. But sorry. So what else do we have?
So Brad Rhea would like to know if you have any experience with online newsletters and blogs.
It's great. I know it's great content. It's very helpful with search engine optimization. I don't know if anybody else.
I have a group that is creating a blog post to, and you link it right. They have a page, but it gets linked right to their website. But then when a blog gets uploaded, say it's on a Monday, you shoot a Facebook post linking to the blog, which then drives traffic to your website. So that's the benefit of a blog. Ideally, it would be from the physicians. So if you've got one or two guys that enjoy blogging, I would do it at least once a month. So therefore, your patients will begin to expect it. It's like, oh, I'm going to have Dr. Jason's blogs coming up this month. So that's the benefit of it.
Great.
Thank you, Lynn. I think we have time for one last question, or rather comment from Miranda Madar. Expecting an ROI across all tactics individually is a bad precedent to set. All tactics need to work together to deliver on overall investment. Any comments?
Good point.
Agree.
She's speaking from experience.
Yeah.
So well said.
I think one thing I want to mention, co-marketing. Talk about if Concord Orthopedics and Associated X-Ray market together, we share both of our pools. We grow together. Your customers become mine, and vice versa. If you can do that with your sales reps, with other people, it can help. It can help drive traffic back and forth. Co-marketing is a powerful thing.
Great. Well, I think this has been a great event. I think a great panel today. Thank you so much. And Lynn, thanks for filling in last minute. Didn't show a bit. You were a pro.
Thanks.
It's like you've been preparing for weeks. So I
Thanks.
appreciate everybody being on here. We are available afterwards as well. So I would encourage you maybe to connect with us on LinkedIn. That way you can, if you have any other questions ever, you can feel free to reach out to us, and happy to help you however we can.